Hello, everybody, and welcome to Troy Rafferty and the People's Voice. And I am thrilled to have Fred Robbins, Super Bowl champion, businessman, philanthropist, local icon, here with me today. And so we're going to have a real interesting conversation. And I want to thank you for being here, Fred. This really means a lot to me.
Hey, it means a lot for you to have me, man. I'm excited to be here, and thank you.
Well, let's talk a little bit. You went to Tate High School.
Oh, yeah.
And now a lot of people might not know that you were actually a baseball player, too.
Yeah, I've been that was the first sport I started playing was baseball. I've been playing baseball since I was 5, and I didn't start playing football until I got to high school, so baseball was my favorite sport. I still love it, even to this day. And so football was kind of growing me. It's just when you become one of the biggest guys in the school, everybody just expects you to play, football. So it grew on me, and hey, it all worked out.
So Tate obviously has a long history of great athletes coming out of there.
Yeah.
The great Don Sutton. Don
Yes.
Sutton came out of there, baseball. And so tell me a little bit about what it was that made you go from baseball to football.
I always wanted to play football growing up, but it was, back then it was the weight issue. I was always a big kid, and so I would have been playing with
You're
the
a big
older
kid.
kids. But it's just baseball, and I play a little bit of basketball, just here and there, but just something to keep me going. But when I got to high school, I just decided, hey, look, this is what I've been wanting to do for a while, and so I remember going into high school my freshman year summer program. The coach was like, look, hey, you can do baseball the first half of the day, then football the second half, and so that's what I did.
So was it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but was it love? Like, did you just have a specific love for the sport of football over baseball, or did it just kind of grow naturally on you? Obviously,
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously you've done very well in football, but I'm
Yeah.
just curious. What was it? Just a love of the sport?
Yeah, it was a love. Like I said, I always wanted to play it. My dad kind of held me out. But then my favorite athletes growing up was Bo Jackson and Dion. They were both two-sport guys. And so when I got to high school, like the coach was like, hey, you can do both. There's no, you can if you want to. And so, but I had success doing it, and this crazy thing about it is I played my freshman year, and I didn't like football. You know what
Really?
I mean? I didn't like it, and so I didn't play it all again until like my junior year. I didn't play my sophomore year.
What was
at
it
all.
I didn't like about it? I'm
I
curious about that.
wanted to be like the running back, but they wanted me to play offensive line, and I was like, nobody wants to be offensive lineman, and so
You're in the trenches.
Yeah, in the trenches, man. And I was like, I don't know, this ain't for me. And then started my whole sophomore year, but I had a growth spurt. Another growth spurt, I should say. And then 11th grade year, coach said, look, hey, come out and try football again. You know what I mean? I think you really would enjoy it now. And so I came back out and I started playing defensive line and tight end, and I loved it. You know what I mean? I was having good success there. I was starting, and so here it is. Just one thing led to the next.
Well, you're an incredible leader in our community.
Yeah.
You really are.
Thank
you and your wife both do
Yeah.
great charitable work. Mr. Robbins Neighborhood. You guys are wonderful. What brought you back to the community? Because you've played for New York, you've played for the Rams, you've played for all these teams.
Yeah.
Well, three teams, right?
Yeah.
But so what brought you back? What drove you to come back to Pensacola? Because I want to talk a little bit about our community, and we're going to talk a lot about what all the charitable work you do. But what is it that drove you back here?
I think deep down, I always wanted to come back. But when I had success, like in New York, people trying to, drive me back to New York because we were doing some good things in New York as well. But back home, people just saying, look, hey, our kids, just need help. You know what I mean? And we didn't have, I felt like the means like other big cities, so I just wanted to come back. I felt it was a need for me to come back and just help out the kids who kind of going on the same path that I went down. And I understand how hard it is, and how to stay focused, so that was my drive to really come back, where it started for me to kind of help the new up-and-coming kids, man, have success, down the line, down the road.
Well, and you've been doing a great job with that. And let's talk a little bit for a few minutes about Mr. Robbins Neighborhood. Tell all our listeners what that is and what the goal of it is.
Yeah. Well, it started, when we was doing Miss Robbins neighborhood, when I was in New York with the Giants, and we'd have kids come to the practices, in New York, kids had, good grades. They just couldn't really, stay out of trouble. But when we came to Pensacola, it's like the total opposite. At one point we had like one of the lowest graduation rates in the state of Florida here in Pensacola. So kids weren't really getting in trouble. They just wasn't really, the education wasn't there. And so we decided, instead of trying to help, like that the 1%, 1.5% of guys who do make it to college and maybe make it to the NFL, let's try to help the 98.5% of kids who don't have any other plan. And so that's been our focus and our goal. You're going to have those kids who going to excel. They're going to have their avenues to go to college, right? But what happens to the other 98.5% of kids that play? And so that's been like our focus, to kind of help them really push their education, show them alternative career paths and job choices. Hey, you might like sports, but here's some other careers in sports that you might like. And I bring in people that I needed to have successful a 12-year career, nutritionist, physical therapist, equipment manager, so we bring in people to speak who make decent salaries for a long time, and so we want to show those kids what other careers are out there besides being a professional athlete.
Because a lot of kids, I think, don't realize that there's a very few people who achieve the level that you achieve. Yes. They go in and excel the way you excelled in the Super Bowls and the NFL and in everything. And so it's important to develop those kids with other professions.
Exactly.
To do it, because it really is a rare thing to be the talent that you are.
Yeah.
But to have them have you teach them those things means something.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about leadership. Your thoughts on leadership. You were named the captain. If I'm right, you were the captain of the defense.
Yes.
And so what is it about leadership that you teach kids what made you the leader that you are?
I think just being able to listen.
Okay.
I think just being able to listen, hearing what other guys' views, other people's opinions, being outspoken, but also just, letting guys know the hard truth. And I think, guys and people respect when you're just totally honest and not just beating around the bush with them. And I think just learning how to, build relationships, with your teammates, your coaches and everyone else around you. I think you got to treat everyone the same respect. And I think people take notice of that. People will take notice if I treat my teammates a certain way, but hey, I'm mean and rude to, the people in the cafeteria who cook our food every day for these athletes. So I think all around people pay attention to how you navigate yourself, how you move, and that's what when guys. I think it was an honor for me, especially in New York, with all the other guys that we had, on the team, to be nominated, as captain, for the Giants. And I think that's really what really elevated me the more to even want to do more, because now I knew what I was capable of, but now I noticed that people also see the good in what I'm doing. And now
you coach and train and teach young athletes that are going into the combine.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about the work you're doing out there at Andrews Institute, training these young athletes to get ready for the combine, which I guess is this week, right?
Yeah, this week.
Yeah, this week. Well, which is why I am doubly appreciative of you being here, because I imagine you got a lot going on. But talk a little bit about that and the importance to you of that work.
I just feel like I have a lot to offer. Now that I'm on the other side of the spectrum. As a coach, and I've been there and I played there, I understand what these guys are going through. And so I think a lot of it has to do with, off the field issues. The football, comes easy, like just teaching them the drills and what to do. But now they have to train their mind to business aspect. In high school and college, they're so used to listening a lot and not really being outspoken. Now you got to make that shift to be outspoken. Now you got to handle, your business off the field. You got agents and managers and financial advisors and lawyers
money.
So now you got to worry about the business side of sports. And that's where a lot of guys get lost in the mix because they're not used to it. They don't understand it. And you got to be able to make quick, sound, fast decisions that's going to affect how you live the rest of your life. And so off the field issues are one of the most important things I stress. You got, family, people, friends, everybody always day-to-day calling, you know what I mean? And so it's the lifestyle that's hard. The football, putting on the pads, that's the easy stuff. But the lifestyle that comes with the game now is totally different.
So okay, let's talk about that for just a second. Mm-hmm. So you hear about all these stories, like Mike Tyson losing, $400 million, what have you, because that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
You have to manage this stuff. You've obviously been very successful. You've been able to manage that. Mm-hmm. So what is a message to the young athletes that maybe, that maybe come into a lot of money, have managers, have agents, have all of these things? What is the message that you send to them?
The message is clear, like, look, hey, just pay attention. A lot of guys just don't pay attention to what's going on around them. They don't understand it. If I want to be the best football player, I got to understand the game. I got to study the game. I got to learn it. I got to know the playbook. Okay, that's the same thing with the playbook to life too as well. Like, you making this money, you got to be able to understand how everything works, to understand like the business side of it. And so that's what I stress to guys. It's really, just really understanding everything that goes around. Putting on the pads is easy, but once the practice is over,
well, putting on the pads is easy for a guy your size. I don't know if it'd be easy for me, but
after all that is said and done, man, it's like, okay, you got to be on top of everything at 24/7. It never stops, because now, if you don't do something they like, new guys are getting brought in every year. So it's a rotating cycle. You got to perform every day. Because people's jobs are at stake, because the scout that scouted you or the general manager drafted you, if you don't produce, their job is online. So it's the constant flow that you always got to be.
And they have to have mentors like you.
Yes.
Somebody that's been through it, that has succeeded, who has done well,
yes,
and is giving back. You have to have people like that, because I always joke around. Well, maybe this is a good analogy. Maybe it's not. But when I always joke around, when I became a trial lawyer, they don't teach you in law school how to try a case.
Yeah.
There's nothing but going out there and doing it.
Yeah.
Just kind of like with football.
Exactly.
But they don't teach you in college how to manage managers, agents, money, what to do once you start having that level of success.
Exactly.
And so it's important to have mentors like you doing those things. And so they're very lucky to have you doing that for them.
Yeah.
So I know I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about some fun stuff. Okay. First of all, I know you got a Wake Forest hat on.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's okay. I brought you this. I brought you this Notre Dame mug. You can have it.
Yeah.
It's good. We're gonna shift you over to being an Irishman. But let's talk a little bit about some fun stuff, like things that happen in the huddle.
Okay.
What I think the listeners want to know, what happens in the huddle.
Man, all type of things happens in the huddle. It's you got guys that you respect. I think everybody respects all the guys. Now you're gonna play against guys you just don't like. And it's a lot of fun stuff happen when you're winning. But when you're losing, it's you got a lot of alpha males in the huddle. A lot of these guys.
Well, y'all are alpha males.
Have been the top dogs from when they started playing Little League. And so when things are not going, your way, personalities come out. And they say when you get to the NFL, you got to be able to have thick skin. Guys are going to say some things are going to happen, but you can't take it personal, right? You just got to, afterwards shake hands, understand it, and just move on. And so when you're winning, everything's fine. But when you're losing, you got to deal.
In that and everything in life.
You got to deal with who's pointing the blame and finger pointing, and also the teams on the other side is hearing that too as well. But I think what the surprising thing is people don't realize is the referees. I think the referees talk more trash than anybody.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, the referees, they listen. They get a front row seat to it, and when that mic is off, you know what I mean, they say some crazy things, you know what I mean?
So I'm curious. So I interviewed Terry Bradshaw one
Mm-hmm.
time, and he was of course he's funny.
Yeah.
He's a funny
Yeah.
guy. But he always said in the huddle, he said it was amazing. Everybody that came in the huddle that was a wide receiver or a running back was wide open.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, why didn't you throw me the ball? Drew Brees, I interviewed Drew Brees, and Drew Brees said the same thing. He's like, you've got 18 receptions.
Yeah.
It's the third quarter.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But is that true? Is everybody when?
It is, man.
Now I know you're on the defense side.
Well, the same thing for defense, especially when, if the defense coordinator is making a call and, guys always up to date on their stats. Like, hey, if I get a couple more tackles, I get a bonus. Or if I get another couple sacks, I get a bonus. So it's one thing when you're seeing this other guy over here getting sacks and you ain't got none yet. And you like, man, hold on, let's change up some of these play calls. Let me get some, let me make some plays. And so it's always that, and it's the huddle is the huddle. I wish, and it's crazy because I used to get mic'd up a lot because I played nose guard 3 technique. And I have like DVDs.
Well,
of,
explain what that means.
So they put like a microphone like right here in my shoulder
Right.
pads, right? And it's for like, hey, to pick up signal calls or calls, what other teams are doing. And so they had put everything like on a DVD for us to study. So next time we played them, we can understand like what's going on.
So this isn't being broadcast.
No, it's not being.
This is for you to be able to learn for the next game, for the next time
Exactly.
Next time you play them.
And so it picks up everything, every play. And I used to get mic'd up like every game, and so I got like DVDs of what the actual huddle, what goes on in the huddle, because I was mic'd up and I get to hear it first from everything, so. It's just fun to listen to. It is. It still cracks me up, even to this day.
Well, Drew Brees said something interesting, and I'm curious about whether this is the same for the defensive huddles. He said, once I got in the huddle, he said, it was mine.
Yeah.
Nobody talked other than me.
Yeah.
He said, that's just, when I interviewed him, he said, that was it.
Yeah.
It was done.
Yeah.
And so as a captain on the defense, was that the same? Like once you stepped in and said, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Boom.
No. Yeah, it's kind of totally different. Usually like middle linebacker comes in, he gives the call, but if it's something like guys don't want to do, like look, X that. Let's do this. Here's a working. And sometimes defense coordinators, they're like, okay, look, you guys are on the field. You guys are actually playing a game. So I think it's about trust too. Some of the old defensive coordinators will be like, okay, what did you see? Why did you change the call? But you got to have a legit reason, But some of the young guys, young defensive coordinators coming in is like, hey, they try to establish dominance, So it's like, hey, what I call is what we're going to run, no matter what. But you also got to have that veteran leadership. I mean, I think for some of the older guys, we get the green light more than like, say, a rookie or a guy who's in second, third year.
Did you ever change the call?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Did you ever get
Both
in
sides.
trouble?
Hey, if it worked, if I changed the call, if it worked, it worked. But if it didn't work,
if you're winning, it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. But if it didn't work, then you get you're gonna get an earful. Then they're gonna call you out in meetings and whatever. But hey, it's just a gamble you take.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners a little bit about your head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Like good qualities, bad. I don't want you to insult people.
Yeah.
But good qualities and bad qualities. Growing up, I've had good bosses. I've had bad bosses.
Yeah.
But tell the listeners a little bit about that.
I think what got me going in college, I had a great coach, Jim Caldwell. Great, respectable guy. He, knew a bunch of NFL greats, coached a lot of NFL great coaches. But he kind of really set the tone, just from like the leadership standpoint and how to respect coaches. I don't have to agree with them all the time, but it's their program, right? This is how they run the team.
You're the coach.
Yeah, you're the coach. And so when I got to Minnesota, when I was drafted, Dennis Green, great coach.
Mm-hmm.
He was a veteran coach. And the veterans say, look, if Chris Carter came in and said, Coach, we need a day off. We need to relax. He respect that, because he trusts those guys.
I need to let
Yeah.
my muscles rest. I need
Yeah,
to.
and he always said, "Look, I don't believe in finding guys. You know, if I feel like I got to find you, I might as well just cut you. You know." And so that was his ordeal. You know, but he was a great coach. And then when I got to New York, I had Tom Coughlin. You know, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Tom Coughlin. You hear the stories about him, but he loved football so much. He was passionate about it. You know, and he had a 5-minute rule. He said all the clocks in the building 5 minutes ahead. And then you had to be 5 minutes earlier than what the clock says, you know, to all the meetings. He fined guys, you know, for everything, whether it's if you forgot your playbook or you didn't bring pencils or notepad to the meetings, or if you're overweight, if you're underweight. I mean, everything he can find you for, he will find you for. But he was really teaching us, and, you know, like, hey, look, you got to be a professional, right? You know, I come at this in a professional manner. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to handle yourself, you know. And a lot of times guys had a hard time with that because they've never been around a coach who did anything like that. And so it took a while for him to get used to us and us get used to him. But, you know, once everybody on the same page, you know, a couple years, we won the Super Bowl, you know.
So okay, all right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of coming, you know, how did you manage? Obviously, you've been very successful. You continue to be very successful. How did you manage going from the college ranks to the pros? Because I got to imagine, and I don't know. I never. It might shock you, but I've never played professional football.
Yeah.
But how did you manage that shift? Because I imagine it's got to be a big culture shift.
Yeah, it's a big culture shift. I think I had, you know, some veteran guys tell me. I had a great John Randall, Hall of Fame defensive lineman. He was like, listen, you know, you got to treat this like a job, right? He was like, it's people who work a 9 to 5, right? He was like, you know, they might be buddies in the office, but after 5 o'clock, they don't want to see each other again to the next day. Football is the same way. You're not going to get along with everybody. Everybody's not your friend because it's a competition. Money's involved, right? Money's involved, stats involved. He's like, look, you're a rookie. You're 22 years old. No wife, no kids, no responsibilities, right? He said you're competing against some guys who in their 30s, married with 3 or 4 kids. So their approach is a little bit different than yours, right? And so I learned from an early age then, like, okay, how to really treat this as a business, right? To understand, like, everything that goes on, you know what I mean? And, like, how it is a day-to-day fight, you know? And I think that's what really kind of helped me throughout my years, how I approached it. I mean, I've asked guys for help, or how to understand, you know, things I didn't understand, and they wouldn't tell me because some veteran guys look at me as competition, you know, and they would not tell me a single word. So I learned that early on in the first couple of years is, look, okay, this is a business. I'm not going to be cool with everybody, but I do have to respect it, and I think that's what made me had the qualities I do have now to continue.
So all right, let's talk a little bit about competition, because it's funny you say that, because when I was in law school, I treated law school as a job.
Yeah.
I got up, I went to work, I did my job, I did whatever I needed to do to get through. But one of the things that drives me is the competition and the love of competition, and the love of going out there and competing against other people, trying cases, you know. So how do you deal with now, because professional athletes like you, I mean, you're a young man.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with losing, this probably sounds bad, but not having that competitive nature?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got the competitive nature. That's not the right phrase. About losing the ability to go out there and put the pads on and go out there and try to win.
Yeah. I think that's why I got so into training guys now, because I missed that competitive edge. I missed that lifestyle. And now I'm able to teach it a little bit better. You know what I mean? And now what I know now, I wish I knew then. I would have been a better player, you know. And I never forget that. I remember when I first got to the Vikings, right? And you were going to the training camp, and we have like 16 guys. And our defense line coach said, hey, listen, we're only going to keep 8. right? So we got 16 guys in training camp. We're only going to keep 8. I already know who 6 are going to be, right? So now you really got 8 guys competing for 2 spots, and they put you on the spot. Today, Fred, okay, it's between you and Troy. In front of the whole team, right? The whole team in a team meeting going to know, okay, this is going to come down to me or you today, right? And being put on the spot like that is like, how you going to respond, right? And that's what some teams do on purpose to see, okay, do I have to self-motivate you, or do I have to say like main things to be that blatant to get out of you what I know you're capable of doing, right? And so I learned that on from the first day I got to the Vikings, and seeing your name, when you used to see your name from when I first started in high school, Fred, number 1, the top defense lineman. Even when I got to college, I started, 4 years of redshirt freshman, and all of a sudden I'm back down to the bottom of the barrel. Well, I'm in that bottom 8, and I've got to fight against other 7 guys for a roster spot, who every day the coach say, look, okay, this is a competition between you 2 guys, and everybody on the team knows it. So that competitive edge, now I can teach that a little bit more, and I can get my point across a little bit better.
So let's talk a little bit about taking it outside of football for a minute. You're obviously an incredible leader in our community. You are an incredible leader, just an incredible leader. So let's talk about a few things going on. We just ended Black History Month.
Yes.
Didn't end it. H.K. Matthews, I had H.K. on recently, who's obviously a civil rights icon.
Yes.
He made a comment to me that has resonated in my mind ever since I interviewed him a few weeks ago, that it's not Black history, it's American history. It's American history.
Yes.
And he obviously HK made several profound statements to me, but let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in America and in Florida, about this whole banning of Black history, not being able to teach kids Black history. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I think it's like you said, it's not really Black history, is just American history. I mean, if you look at any other profession, law, you studied lawyers, whether they were black, white, whatever race. You studied to make you a better lawyer. I studied football, no matter what the defense line position, defense, no matter what race, who done it. I studied to make myself as a better player, to understand the game a lot better. And there's no difference in education. I think we all can learn from our past, to see what people have gone through, no matter what profession we're in, to see what other people have gone through and what they did to make America better again, to make this community better again. And I think we just can't forget that there's no, like, where we've been and how much room, how much work that still need to be done, right? Building those relationships, being able to sit down with HK, being able to sit down here with you, build those relationships to let people understand, like, hey, I just don't hang around athletes every day, right? I just don't do football 24/7, right? I think more people just need to really get involved in the community stuff to understand what's going on in their own neighborhoods, right? Their own cities, to make everything better. Don't be afraid to, speak to someone different and new, because that's what they make you do in every profession, is do something different. Don't speak to the same people. Learn how to be a jack of all trades, master of all. I think more people need to sit down and have, these type of conversations.
So what do you think is the message if you're talking to kids, which I know you do a lot? If you're talking to kids, what is the message to young Black children? Okay, in terms of where we are in America, where we are with race relations. Because when I talked to HK, I made the comment. I said the fight is still on.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
and look what's going on right now. I mean, there's legislation being passed to ban books from schools, to not talk about race. Black history.
Yeah,
I mean, all these things. What do you tell when a young child comes up to you and says, Coach, tell me what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I tell them things I did. Regardless, if I was to say, hey, someone to tell me, hey, you're not going to be a football player, am I going to believe that and not do it? Or do I know what I'm capable of doing? I can, continue to do that. And I tell kids to take the same aspect. You know what I mean? Like, and build relationships, right? You just can't hang around your peers, other black kids, right? You got to do something different. You got to be, you got to talk to people that you don't normally talk to and have these conversations. Be friends. But I think the problem is people just don't believe in relationships anymore, building those relationships. And also I would say that the problem is also the parents. Exposure is a huge thing for me, right? If you haven't been exposed to anything else outside of what you normally do daily, then of course everything's gonna be separated, right? Exposure is so key. Kids need to understand like what other people are doing in other places, right, to make their place better, right? And just exposure with other kids, other races, and having these uncomfortable conversations. You and I can sit here and talk about sports, right? You can sit here and talk about race. But how many other people out here that can say that? They just keep it. And another problem is when they brought race into play in the sports, right, with the whole kneeling. I think that really separated, things as well too, which is another conversation. But I think that just separated, things as a whole too as well. Is now you brought sports was a way for me to get away from all the distractions, right? To get away from daily life. That helped elevate me. Now, when you bring race into the sports arena, now you separate teams, you separate teammates, you separate the ownership, you separate fans. And so now, how do we get back to building those relationships and having uncomfortable conversations where you and I can talk about this all day?
Uncomfortable conversations.
How many other people can say that? They don't want to. They just want to have the easy, relaxed conversations, but until we have enough people having these uncomfortable conversations, things are never going to change.
Somebody sent me a photo yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday, outside the Sanger Theater that had colored entrance around back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to me that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that was in our generations.
Yes.
That was not that long ago. Mm-hmm. And so we still have a lot of work to do in terms of those relationships and how we deal with each other. And I love your phrase, uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
I love it. You have to have because I've always said, listen, I don't understand different people's cultures unless I sit down and talk to them.
Unless you sit down and talk with me, exactly.
Okay. I may not agree with your religion. Mm-hmm. I may not agree with your viewpoint on things.
Yes.
But I want to have the conversation so we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stop talking about it, then we lose.
Exactly.
That's what we do. We lose. And that's what's frustrating to me about some of the legislation that's being proposed right now, because it seems like it's everything to quiet the conversation.
Yes.
Nobody wants to have the black, white, the brown, whatever you want to talk about. Any conversations about that. And that is where we fail as a country.
Yeah.
That's where that happens.
And that's what's kind of contradicting, because I look at the approach, even when I train guys, like when I train these guys now, some guys are set in their ways, but I have to know their background to understand, like, how can I coach you better, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing when you talk about race. Look, you don't have to like it, but you got to at least respect it, understand where I'm coming from, and understand, like, listen, hey, you can have two different people read the same book and write a paper that's totally different, right? And so you just can't just say, oh, I taught this person and you take that one answer and think that's it for everyone, right? Some people, that's my dad's age, 70, 76, 77, that's his age, that he went to school with, who never left Pensacola, right? So their thought process is going to be totally different from mine, from someone who had the exposure to go off to college, to go live in the Midwest, in the East, down South. I've been to different places, and I understand, how people are. I have that exposure. So you can't just take people who just never left Pensacola and think that's it. Their thought process is not going to be the same. So you got to have uncomfortable conversations with people who never left, people who did have exposure, and that's how we make things better.
So let's talk just for a second about obviously this big shift with the NIL,
Yeah.
the name, image, likeness.
Mm-hmm.
Talk. I mean, are you in favor of that? Do you think that's a good? Do you think that's a good move for sports, or do you think that's a negative, or what do you think? Or do you think? And we can get into
Yeah.
the whole issue of paying college football
Yes.
players,
Yeah.
paying college, all college athletes.
Yeah.
But tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Man, two different angles I'm gonna come at it.
Okay.
One is we talked about this earlier. We believe in competition.
Right.
Competition makes us better, right?
Absolutely.
The NIL, I think, is shifting away from that. It's allowing kids who are afraid of competition to go somewhere else, right? Instead of working, I was reading Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. He was saying he disagrees with the NIL. He said, I played behind Patrick Peterson and I think another first-round defensive back. He said, that's who made me who I am today because I played behind those guys at LSU.
It elevated him.
And it elevated me to play better and stick it out and learn how to, fight and play harder and do this. That part is getting taken out of sports, the competitive. I think that's what I don't like about it. On the other side, the NIL, I do think guys should get something, but the problem is some schools are doing it the right way and some doing it the wrong way. And it's not they even doing it the wrong way, it's legal now, right? And so if you look at a small school like Wake Forest.
It's been going on for years.
Yeah, it's been going on. If you look at a small school like Wake Forest, we got like 4,500 students undergrad, right? Okay, we can't compete with Texas A&M, who's probably got the richest budget in all of college football, right? So our pitch to the NCAA is, look, hey, that's not fair, right? We're not a big school like Texas A&M. How are we going to get paid? And Texas A&M saying to the NCAA, that ain't our fault, And so now you got schools who are kind of doing it two different ways. If Wake Forest comes in and tells a kid, look, hey, man, we're going to offer you a scholarship in NIL, we give you, $50,000 a year for the next, 4 years, right? And we're going to put it in a account for you that way you can have when you get out of college. Then you got another school saying, look, hey, well, we give you $8 million.
Right.
Right? Now, what do you think the parents want? Right? So now that's another problem. Parents are like, hey, we don't want the $50,000. Let's go for this $8 million. Right? But the stipulations might be high, might be a lot of work this kid has to do. And if it doesn't work out, okay, you don't get no $8 million. So I think that's kind of like the problem with NIL. There's no structure to it.
Okay.
Right? You got every school is just different. Boom, 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 boom. And now what are kids leaning to now most? The money. Right? They don't even think about sports. I can't remember the last time I heard a kid say, when I asked a kid, look, what do you want to major in? I get no answer. Right? Because they don't even know now. It's all about NIL. And that's what the parents are gearing these kids towards. Who's going to come with the most money? One week somebody come in and say, okay, your son gets a scholarship, but the next week somebody comes in and say, we're going to offer your kid $5 million.
So ultimately going down the road, does it hurt sports or does it help sports?
I think it's hurting.
Yeah, okay.
I do. I mean, not everybody – it works for guys like Joe Burrow, like if you're a quarterback. I mean, it works for guys like that, right? But how many guys can actually look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, I'm that caliber guy right now? You got guys who's transferring only after like a year or two. Okay. Right? Because he's seeing what everybody else get and think they're going to get that. You know what I mean? But like you talked about earlier, are you that 1.5% guy? And I think that's the problem with hurting sports, and there's no structure to it at all. I think that's the main focus.
So I think our listeners would like to know, what do you miss most about the game?
The camaraderie, just being around. I don't miss everything I had to do, like all the running and lifting and all that other stuff. But I just think like,
well, you still do all that though. You just train other people to do it.
The camaraderie, man. Just the relationships I built with guys, the locker room, the away trips, just to, because every guy's different, and I remember when I was with the Giants, our coach made a different guy every night during training camp stand up and just say little things about you. Nothing football, just life. What you went through, some of your obstacles you had to overcome, some of your adversity moments. And you learn a lot about guys who've been through a lot more worse situations than you. you know, and I think that's what I missed the most, is just knowing everybody's path was different, right? And just learning what those guys went through and how that made them who they are. And I think that's what helped mold me and shape me into, you know, being a leader, because I see, man, that guy stuck it out and did this. You know, I can apply that to my life, right? And used to seeing that, having that in the locker room every day. Now I don't have that. You know, you don't have it like every day like you used to have it. You know, I think that's what I miss about the game the most. And I think that's why I like training these guys now, because it helps me be around the game, you know, but out of it at the same time, you know.
Well, you do an incredible job, and I can tell you this: Super Bowl champion, icon, philanthropist, businessman. We're lucky to have you in our community.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We're very lucky to have you in our community, and I applaud you, and I pray that you stay and you keep doing all your great work that you're doing. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you, Fred, for being here.
Oh, thank you.
And once again, I want to thank you for everything you do for our community.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you all.